Hello, everyone, and welcome back to your favorite weekly unmatched format on Sundays, Strategy Sunday. Hi, we're back with Volume 5. This time we're taking a closer look at Cloak and Dagger out of the Teen Spirit Marvels Unmatched set. And yeah, we'll just hop right into it. The basic stats. Um, I think everyone who knows my videos will know what will come now. Cloak and Dagger are dual heroes, melee with 8 health each, and move 2. So, move 2, melee, not great. That kind of leads to some problems with you getting just fatigue because you'll probably have to approach every single time. Yukon problem, whatever. Um, you have some ways to work around that, but not many. 8 health each is really low. That's like almost Raptors level low, but Raptors still have a third body with 7 health, so that adds up to 21, while Cloak and Dagger only have 8 each. To be fair, you have some healing in the deck, but that's just like Winter Soldier, really hard to trigger. Um, but yeah, it can still happen. Well, yeah, 8 health each is really low. One of them can probably get targeted by your opponent if you don't draw the right cards, and then they'll just die. So that's probably a big problem. And then total health pool 16 is it's not horrible. It's a bit below average, average being 18.9. But yeah. The good thing is you have two bodies on the board that are both like big fighters. It's not like you have a one health sidekick there that will just get killed in the next turn easily. And yeah, no, you have two big bodies with a chunky health. We've seen with Oda lately that having many multi-health bodies on the board can be really good. Um, so yeah, that's that's great for you. It gives you more board control than most other melee fighters, even if they have a sidekick. Because both of your fighters are just basically heroes and are both equally scary sometimes. Um, it's really good. And then 12 unit cards make the deck kind of consistent. Um, we'll see. I think they have also kind of sometimes the Winter Soldier problem where some cards are just much better than others. But yeah, um, we'll just hop right to their character ability. But as we see, there are two abilities there, one for each of the fighters. So we'll start with the Cloak ability first. Um, it says Umbra. After you attack, if Cloak dealt at least 2 combat damage, your opponent discards 1 card. Okay, discard as a hero effect after combat is really good. That's insanely good. Technically, that makes each of your attacks potentially discard, which is holy crap. Like Medusa has 6 discards and people complain. This can be way more throughout the game. Um, However, it is only if Cloak attacked and only if he dealt at least 2 combat damage. Average block value is 3, so you usually have to play at a 5 attack. 5 value attack will probably get you the discard. Maybe sometimes you'll get a 4 over a feint or something, because feint won't stop the ability. And then yeah, you still get it. Um, but yeah, this ability sounds really strong. It is really strong to move your opponent's hand size down, but it isn't as ridiculous as some people might think on first glance. However, it's still great for the value game. Like whenever you get the discard the 2 combat damage, your opponent doesn't just take 2, they also have to discard 1, so you're kind of trading 2 cards for 1, which is really good for you. And yeah, probably the most useful thing about this ability is that you can attack 1/2 sidekicks to make your opponent waste cards. Because usually 1/2 sidekicks they don't defend too often, probably, except if it's like some crucial card they have and they just want to play it before they're gone. But even if they then should decide not to defend because they don't want to spend any of their valuable cards, yeah, you'll deal at least 2 combat damage to them because every of your attack is a 2 value or higher. So you'll kill them. And even though the 1 health sidekicks only have 1 health, 2 combat damage is still dealt. So your opponent will still have to discard a card. And since they didn't defend, they probably have some good stuff there that they didn't want to spend before, and now they have to discard a card, making them waste cards, which is really, really good. And yeah, like I said, each of your attacks is at least a 2, so your opponent has to respect everything you throw at them. And that kind of makes for some good mind games because humans are like the biggest fear humans have is the fear of the unknown. If we don't know anything, we fear that. Um, Same in card games, like Unmatched. If we know our opponent has potentially a strong card, it doesn't matter if he has it or not, just the fear of it being there influences our playstyle. So just fearing that each attack could be something big and whatever means that you can just attack with small stuff the whole time, your opponent wastes their good blocks, and then you'll get your ability later, or whatever. And yeah, the plan with Cloak, technically with this ability is, of course, you mill your opponent's hand down at the start of the game, kinda get hits on one-off sidekicks, maybe 1 or 2 bigger attacks to get their hand size down, and then once they don't have many defenses left, you'll combo with Dagger. Because, as we'll see, Dagger's character ability is Refraction. After you attack, if Dagger dealt at least 2 combat damage, gain 1 action. Okay, so that's kind of the same trigger as with Cloak. You dealt at least 2 combat damage, but instead of your opponent discarding a card, you gain an action, which is huge combo potential. Um, just like with Cloak, since every of your attacks is at least a 2 value, if your opponent can't defend, you will always gain an action if you attack with Dagger. So that means at the end of a game, if your opponent maybe doesn't have any defenses in hand, or they just don't have any at all in deck left, you can dump your whole hand with Dagger, basically, just like with Beast Form. This is so important because that just means if you have Dagger alive at the end, you don't need your best attacks to finish your opponent. You just need attacks. Doesn't matter which, because you'll deal 2 damage, 3 damage, 2 damage, 2 damage, 3 damage, whatever. And you can chain them all together because you'll always gain the action, and yeah, then your opponent just dies. But the important thing is you have to be sure when to go for the big combo. Yeah, you have all the game time to make it perfect. So don't try to go it like early in the game probably because your opponent usually will have like some good cards they kept and they will still have probably their best blocks or still ready to go or at least in their deck. So bait your opponent's hand, try to get some good defenses at the start, make them discard with Cloak's ability so they discard even more potentially, and then at the end you're kind of setting up your hand so you have at least like 3 or 4 attacks in hand, and then you'll go brrr and dump them all into your opponent. That's basically the plan with Dagger. So going into the cards, we have Light Force Barrage. It's a Dagger only 7 value attack with a boost value of 3. It says so this card's effects cannot be cancelled. After combat, if you won the combat, your fighter takes damage equal to the amount of damage you dealt. Okay, this is a 7 value attack. What the hell? We've only seen it twice. Otherwise, with Oxform with Wukong, the opponent can boost against it, and Tomoe right now, just from the new set, where she has to play it adjacent, and it ends the turn after combat. So 7 value attacks usually have like bad effects on them or good stuff for your opponent. In this case, really bad stuff for you, technically, because taking damage after combat and that not being cancelable is probably worse for you than your opponent most of the time. Because, as I said, you only have 8 health each, And if you throw this into their hero, because you'll never do anything else, please. Um, if you throw this into their hero, they probably have like at least 10 health left, so you're hurting yourself more than them most of the time. Um, it can be used if you know like they have a skirmish in hand and you really want the action game with Dagger. Then you can still play this and afford taking the three to get rid of the skirmish and then still gain the action and do your combo. But that's really risky, and I wouldn't do it often. Like in some cases, it can be helpful, but this card is usually best played as a finisher. Um, because if you kill your opponent, then they are dead, and the after combat doesn't matter anymore. Um, if you kill them over their skirmish with this, then even if you die afterwards with the after combat effect because you were the attacker, you still win the game. Or if Dagger is like close to dying, you know your opponent has a card in hand that will just kill her next turn and you can't do anything about it. Yeah, fuck's sake, just throw this and deal them some damage anymore. Like, yeah. Um, but like I said, don't throw this into sidekick. Please do not. Just like with your ability, even if a one health sidekick or any sidekick doesn't defend and they have less than 7 health, 7 damage is still dealt. So Dagger will take 7. That's like your whole HP. Don't do it, please. Um, one thing to say, this, besides one other card, is your only 3 boost in deck. Which is kinda nice, but also not nice, because this, you have a boostable attack, so having 3 boosts is great to throw them into that. Um, but you have, just like I said, move to melee problems where you can max move for 5, and that only 4 times. Because you have 2 copies of this and then 2 copies of the next card, which is also a 3 boost. So be sure when to really use this or spend it for boosts in your boostable attack, because maybe you'll have to reach your opponent later. And if you don't have this, yeah, you're basically move for melee max. And that's, we've seen from Squirrel Girl how bad that is. Yeah, that about this card. We'll go to Dark Force Dimension. It's a 4 value attack for Cloak specific, and it has a boost value of 3. And it says, after combat, place the opposing fighter in any space. Your opponent discards 1 card. Okay, 4 value attacks are good. They probably win combat like at least 50% of the time because average block value is 3. The movement is really great to warp your opponent anywhere where you want. You can warp them into pins in some bad situation for them, like the pit on Raptor Paddock. You can isolate them from their other fighters, like Yen from her archers or whatever. Um, you can also, uh, nicht you can also. And the funny thing is, this is a unique effect in all of Unmatched. This is the only card that places your opponent in any space, at least attacks. Um, it's the only one that does that. So that's cool. I don't know. That's just a fun fact. Additional discards on this card is really great for the 2-for-1 trade. Um, this card will probably, like 90% of the time, trigger a discard effect from your opponent because you'll deal 2 damage over a feint, and then they still discard from your ability. And if they didn't feint, yeah, well, then the effect happens, so your opponent still discards 1. Yeah, I know there have been way more 3-value feints lately, but like it's still probably going to at least discard 1 most of the time. And just like with Light Force Barrage, this is the only other 3 boost, so it can be great later in the game to reach your opponent or to dump it your boostable. So, Next up, we have Commanding Impact, being a 5 value attack, any, and a boost value of 2, and it says after combat, draw one card. So, Commanding, we've seen in other decks like T-Rex, Sinbad, whatever. 5 value attacks are really good. Even more so in this deck than others, probably. Um, the after combat draw helps you to keep up pressure because hand advantage matters a lot with Cloak and Dagger. Because if your opponent has like way less cards, you can maybe go for a combo turn with Dagger because they maybe only have 1 or 2 defense, and then they'll die, whatever. Um, this is a great card to guarantee you, well, not guarantee, but almost guarantee one of your abilities, because all, like I said, average block is 3, so this will deal 2 damage over that, and then you either get the discard from Cloak or the action gain from Dagger. Um, I would probably more often use this early game with Cloak to mill your opponent's hand down, because I think just the combination of them having to discard one and you draw one, so like you have after that a 2 plus in hand against them. I think that's really great. Um, and also your opponent often wants to feint Cloak's attacks, like either for the for attack that we've just seen, or for one other that we'll get to next. I think next. Yeah, should be next. Uh, you see how good I know this presentation. Um, so this will deal 3 damage over their feint, and then they still discard 1, which is really good. Um, and just like I said before, this is not necessarily needed for the big finisher with Dagger. So you can just dump 1 or 2 early, but I would still probably keep at least 1. So your opponent is like still always afraid of commanding being there. Because like I said, greatest fear of mankind is fear of the unknown. So they'll probably block high when they are like on low blocks. And even if you didn't know that and then you played something low, well, they wasted their highest block and you still have commanding as an option later. Ah, yeah, okay. It was the next card. Um, about fainting. We have Channel the Dark. It's a 2 value any attack with a boost value 2, and it says after combat, if Cloak played this card, place the opposing fighter adjacent to Dagger and gain 1 action. Okay, so 2 value attacks are like usually bad. They don't really deal damage, they probably rely on their effect, and this card does as well, but it's still a really good card. Um, because the after combat effect is like your opponent gets attacked by Cloak. So they probably expect some discard, but then they think like, okay, but then your turn ends, so nothing too special. But with this card, you place them adjacent to Dagger and gain an action. So it's basically just like you attack with Dagger with this case, and then you can just attack with Dagger again, which is really good. Really good. This can make for some like unexpected combo potential. Like, just like I said, maybe your opponent thought like, okay, yeah, Cloak's attacking, that's fine. But then, ha, you're next to Dagger and brr, brr, is that a good sound for doing a combo? I don't know. Um, Funny thing is, we just had some rulings changed with this card, and one other card later in the deck. Because earlier it was like if Cloak played this card and you couldn't place the opposing fighter adjacent to Dagger for some reason. Maybe she's pinned or whatever. I think she's pinned, or like she's defeated. Yeah. Then you wouldn't gain the action. But now it's like do what you can, ignore the rest. So you'll play this card with Cloak, and then you can't place the opposing fighter adjacent to Dagger, but you'll still gain the action because you can't gain an action. So that's kind of funny sometimes, giving you kind of action gain just with Cloak himself later, which can surprise your opponent. Um, oh yeah, it's just a great card to mess with your opponent's positioning. Isolate targets, you can get sidekicks out of the way, throw them across the whole map to Dagger, get heroes out of the way, isolate Yen from her archers, whatever. You can do cool stuff with this positioning wise. And yeah, really good card in the deck, works extremely well together with their kit. And yeah, next up we have, I think, the last red card. And there's so many red cards in this deck, it's insane. Um, we have a 2-value attack, any, being Into the Void with a boost value of 1, and it says during combat you may boost this attack. Okay, so that's the boostable card I've talked about earlier. It's basically just second shot on like second shot the discount wish version, whatever. Um, because it's like earlier we had at the start we had 3-value second shots that could boost 4. Medusa. But then we got like 2-value second shots that could boost for 3 with Muldoon, and yeah. So this is not as great. Um, because like being able to boost this card sounds nice because you can probably match your boost value depending on the block that your opponent plays to get 2 damage over it. Like if they play a 3-value block, you'll use your boost 3 and then you dealt 2 damage. Nice. Um, if they play a 2-value block, you just need a 2-value boost, and then yeah, you still get your ability. However, since average block value is 3, and you only have 4 3 boosts in the deck, it's often not worth it to actually use the 3 boost to get this up to a 5. Sure, you'll deal the 2 damage and then gain an action, but then you like wasted one of your best cards for that. And it feels bad sometimes. And you maybe need those later to reach your opponent or whatever. Um, I think you can probably afford to boost with Light Force once with a Dagger attack because like if you use that card both times, Dagger will probably die just from the self damage. Um, so like using one of them on this is probably fine. Otherwise, I would just dump the 3 boosts in if like one of your fighters is already defeated, then yeah, sure, you can use their 3 boosts for this. But be sure to still know, yeah, your opponent can't just run away after that, because if you don't have any more 3 boosts, yeah, you move full melee. However, this is still great as a bait attack, because like I said, you'll just attack with small stuff, waste your opponent's defenses, and like if they should defend with something like some kind of 2 block, or even a 1 regroup, then you can still boost this card, which is still good. So this is probably your best bait attack in the deck, next to some others that will move later. But yeah, more than that, you can't really do more than that with this card. Next up, we have Perfect Balance, the first versatile in the deck. It's a 4-value, any, with a boost value of 2, and it says during combat, if Cloak and Dagger are both adjacent to the opposing fighter, the value of this card is 6 instead. Okay, 4-value versatiles are great. They will probably prevent 4 damage. This is your highest printed block, and like that's max value block. You can't really argue about the max value block. They're great. However, the during combat of this bumps this to a 6, which is huge. Um, and like it sounds hard to trigger, but with so many movement effects in your deck moving you, your opponent, and like positioning of the maps, this can be triggered way more often than you probably expect. So try to mess around that so you're almost able to play this every single time so your opponent fears this card. Try to position so you set up for this card as often as possible, which your opponent will just think like, oh, wait, he positioned that way so he can play Perfect Balance. If I walk in there and attack, he'll just smack me with a 6, so they might just consider not to attack at all. And like, yeah, if it's really bad, you can still defend for this as a 6, but like I wouldn't probably do that because like 4-value blocks are still enough. I mean, it is still your highest block technically, but yeah, I think the potential of this on attack is just way higher because this is probably guaranteed with your ability. against 99% of decks except the stupid ones right now that, like in TTA, have 5 value blocks, which is yeah. Because the during combat bumps is to 6. If they feint, you at least still have your 4 over the feint. 2 damage, they discard or you gain action. If they don't feint, max value block probably 4. You'll deal 2 damage over that because it's a 6, and then you still get your ability. So yeah, this is insanely good card. Try to set it up as often as possible, make your opponent fear it, and then when you actually use it, it's extremely rewarding, and your many movement effects will help you trigger this almost every time. So really good. Next up, the Living Light. It's a 3 value, versatile, any, with a boost value of 2, and it says after combat, if Cloak played this card to defend, Dagger recovers 2 health. If Dagger played this card to attack, Cloak recovers 2 health. Okay, so 3 value versatiles are good. It's like average block value and with effect, still good. And this is the only heal you have in deck. So if we think about the effect, that's really specific. If Cloak plays this to attack later because like maybe Dagger has to hide or something, um, yeah, this won't heal because this only heals if Cloak defends. However, for Dagger it only heals Cloak if Dagger places to attack. So that can sometimes be really, really hard to pull off because your opponent knows what the trigger of this card is. So if they see like, oh, Dagger is low, then they know, okay, the only way you have to heal Dagger, like really, really heal, we'll get the card later that technically heals, but like not really. Um, the only way for you to heal Dagger is if you attack Cloak, because if Cloak defends with this, then Dagger heals. So try to think what your opponent will probably not do. Attack Cloak, or if they do, probably offensive feint, maybe, to cancel this. And also, this effect becomes totally useless once one of your fighters is dead. Because like, if one is dead, this effect only heals the other. So the one fighter you have left will heal your dead fighter, which can't happen because they're dead. And yeah, so this is it sounds really good. Like 2 healing, if you get this, it's incredibly good. You have to try to trigger at least one of those every game because otherwise you just have 8 health each and probably one of your fighters will just die and then like half your kit is dead. Um, you can use Chosen Fate, your only scheme later, to rearrange your health to trigger this. Um, so you can maybe deal Dagger 2 damage or Cloak 2 damage, and then your opponent will attack Cloak next because they can't reach Dagger and Dagger will recover health, or just you play that first action and then um, you can deal Cloak 2 damage and then you attack with Dagger with this and then Cloak will heal 2. So you can do that to maybe trigger this more often, but it's still very telegraphed and it's like hard to actually get this effect. So if you can make it, this is really good, but yeah. Next up, Into Darkness. It's a 3 value versatile any with a boost value of 2. And it says, after combat, choose one of the fighters in the combat and move them up to 3 spaces. Okay, 3 value versatiles are good as always. Being able to move either fighter is really great because like your whole thing is setting up pins, messing with your opponent's positioning, and being able to choose which fighter will move is really good. We've seen that on skirmish, but this is like non-conditional and like skirmish plus because it's three move and non-conditional, but it's just a 3 value for that. And it's really good because you can move your opponent into pins. You can move one of your fighters maybe around them to create a pin. You can move one of your fighters away, you can move your opponent away. This card is just so incredibly versatile in your game plan, and this allows you to kite with advantage, to control the tempo of a game. What that means, if like you have 7 cards and your opponent has 5 cards, um, and it's your turn now, you will probably have to maneuver up to them, maybe even boost, and then attack. And your opponent knows that. So they probably think, yeah, okay, after that they will get a double attack on you because you're melee, you will have to end adjacent to them, and then, yeah, they can just freely double attack you. But with this, if you play this, you can maneuver, boost down to 7, and attack, and then, yeah, you only have 6 cards in hand, you can move one of your fighters away. And your opponent will then be there and like, huh, damn, I can only attack once if I maneuver up. Maybe run away again or whatever. So this really allows you to mess with what your opponent is able to do and to control the tempo of a game, to know when anyone will probably attack, when they're just too scared, when they can't reach, whatever. This is really good card, and yeah. However, it's still most often used on defense. Because if you play this on offense, like we said in the example, yeah, you'll move your opponent away, but then that leads to their turn, so they still have basically all the options to kind of negate the movement. They can just maneuver back up and still attack. So the movement, yeah, maybe it's spared you from one attack, but that's it. However, if you play this on defense, your opponent will probably not have any actions after that, so what you do with this card will last for your whole turn, which is like way more than just like the 2 milliseconds before your opponent does something on their turn, if you played it on attack. So if you play this on defense, your opponent has less time to react. You can double attack them or whatever, and this just allows you to create great attack opportunities with one of your fighters. Like if your opponent attack Cloak, and then we're like, okay, yeah, I'm only adjacent to Cloak. That's fine. I don't need so many blocks in hand. Yeah, you played this, you can move them adjacent to Dagger, and then, ha! You can combo again. Just like I said, you have so many movement effects. It's really cool. And yeah, this is probably, in my opinion, your best block card overall. Um, just because it's so versatile and it's still free value block. It's really good for your game plan. And yeah. Next up, we have the same card, but like in bad. Um, Traverse the Dark Force. It's a 2-value versatile any with a boost value of 1, and it says after combat, move each of your fighters up to 2 spaces. So 2-value versatiles are not so good on attack. They probably won't deal any damage and would rely on their effect on defense. Like they won't spare you from much and still rely on their effect. And like the effect in this case, moving each of your fighters up to 2 is nice to set up pins, but it's like not into darkness because that one space of movement is maybe all you need. Sometimes 2 spaces of movement, your opponent can probably play around that, and it's like hard to get both of your fighters around them with just 2 movement. Um, Instead of like with 3, that's way more possible. So it's kind of just into darkness and bad. However, being able to move both of your fighters can still sometimes be better because if you can just move yourself or your opponent with into darkness, you might not be able to. Yeah, I should word it otherwise. You may be able to move them like away from you and up to your other fighter, but you probably won't get them in between you. Um, except like if they were already in between you, and then that doesn't matter. But yeah. So that's like, hmm. So this is probably better to set up pins directly. But it's still like then you would have to play this as defense, and that just feels bad because you only have 8 health and taking like maybe 3 damage over this is it hurts. So this is probably the best thing you can like do as a bait attack next to your boostable, because just like with Into Darkness, you can just kite with advantage. You can maneuver up, attack them with this. They wasted a good block, and you can move just 2 spaces back, and they will still have to maneuver up to you. So yeah, that's probably the best use for this card. Otherwise, if you can get a pin with this, yeah, sure, probably worth, probably. Well, yeah, probably just Into Darkness and bad. I thought I went one too far there. Next up, we have Feint. Feint. I think. How often did I discuss Feint now? Let me see. We have Winter Soldier, who had Feint. Oh, I think that's the only one that actually had Feint itself. Yeah, Tamoi had the hero required one. Tesla had 3 value Feint kinda and Thread as well. Okay, funny. Okay, so I didn't talk about Feint that much. um, I'll probably talk about Feint way more in the future. Yeah, we have Feint. We know like immediately hydrate enemies. Cancel all effects on your opponent's card. Uh, 2 value versatiles, just like I said, not that great. Probably won't deal any damage, probably won't prevent that much damage. However, canceling effects is it's good. But just like with Feint and Winter Soldier stack, the usefulness of this card will vary between matchups. Just like I said, against someone like Sinbad, yeah, Feint is one of your best defenses. Against Bigfoot, not so much. Um, but it's still a great card because it can mess around with what your opponent wanted to do. Um, you can deny draw on their effect. You can deny them movement or any other fancy thing that like they have now. Discard, whatever. We've seen so many weirdo effects lately. Yeah. So that's still great because like I said, your main thing is hand advantage, combo. So if you can deny them draw or movement, I think you still feel kind of good if playing this card. Like almost every deck has some kind of effect that you want to cancel. So yeah, even as a first attack, if you're able to double attack your opponent, playing a feint sometimes is really good because your opponent thinks, oh, they will able to they will be able to attack me twice. So I'll play a movement effect on the first card to move away, and then their second action will probably have to be a maneuver. So if you play Feint as a first action attack, you will cancel that movement effect, and then you can still do your second one. And then maybe that don't have any defense, and yeah. Or you can cancel their draws because they expected, yeah, I'll just draw 2 cards on the first defense and then I'm fine. No, they won't, because this would stop that. So I think in Cloak and Dagger's case, I would probably more often use Feint on attack, because taking the 2 over a Feint from many attacks is like, it hurts you way more than other fighters because you only have 8 health each. And like denying them draw or movement on their first defense can be, this can just win you the game sometimes. But yeah, Feint is just a really versatile card. Depends on the matchup how you use it, depends on which cards have already been used. And yeah, just great card. And then we go to the last combat card. This is your only blue. It's a 2 value, any, and it's the Living Shadow with a boost value of 2. It says during combat, if Dagger played this card, she swaps spaces with Cloak. Cloak is now the defender, and the value of this card is 4 instead. Okay, 2 value blocks are not so good. They probably rely on their effect, just like this. Um, Being able to swap is really nice as a surprise because like maybe your opponent wanted to attack Dagger because Dagger is low, and then you say, "Ha! No, you'll attack Cloak instead, so Dagger is safe." Which maybe they didn't want to because now Cloak can attack them and they'll have to discard from your ability. So yeah, just being able to swap is really great. Um, this card also helps you to spread the damage on both of your fighters because I think your opponent is incentivized to go for Dagger more than Cloak because Cloak probably won't win you a game on like on his own because he doesn't have like that big attacks and he can't really do a combo except for like uh, the new ruled one. I'm bad at names. um, so they're probably incentivized to go for a Dagger more often than Cloak. So this being Dagger specific to swap is really good. So you can like get Cloak in there as a meat shield. Dagger is safe. And yeah. However, this card also, just like the other one with the action gain, had a rule change. Being if Dagger played this card, new ruling is do what you can, ignore the rest. She swaps space with Cloak. Even if Cloak is defeated, this card's value will still be 4 because it says, yeah, you can't do the swap. Cloak is not the defender, but you can make this a 4. That can happen, so that will happen. So even if Cloak is defeated, this is still a 4 value defense orc Dagger, which is like really good. However, if your opponent like really wants to get sure that Dagger gets attacked, they can still offensive feint this. Um, then the effect won't happen because like other swaps are usually immediate. And we've seen Snake Root from Electra. We've seen like the Houdini swap. I forgot the name of that. Those are usually immediate, so on defense they'll always trigger. This is during combat, so offensive feints will stop this. Um, that can be really bad for you because then they probably can attack Dagger again and put pressure on her, and she'll maybe die. Also, we've seen like a 4 value offensive cancel on She-Hulk now. We've seen the Tesla one that ignores S3. Little Red can do that as well. So there are many things that will even deal damage over this as a feint, as cancelled. Um, so if you know your opponent has such a card, maybe you'll hesitate a bit to play this, unless you know like they don't have any of those, or like they're gone, or whatever. So yeah, be aware of that. But otherwise, this is kind of the card that gives you much time to get the right cards for your finisher. You just swap Dagger out, you get the right cards, and then even if Cloak should die through this card, I think that's fine sometimes because Dagger is the one that will win you the game most of the time, and it's more important for her to stay alive, and then you can still finish at the end with a good combo. Yeah, then last card in the deck, we have Chosen Fate. It's the only scheme, and it has a boost value of 1. Says deal up to 4 damage to one of your fighters. Your other fighter recovers that amount of health. Draw 2 cards. Okay. Um, I already mentioned this card with the Living Light, your healing. Being able to spread your health between your fighters is really good because your opponent, like I said, is probably incentivized to target one of them to get them out of the way ASAP because then half of your effects are like dead and you can only do one thing anymore. Um, so if they go for Dagger, for example, she's at 1 health, Cloak is still full because it was an attack. You can deal 4 damage to Cloak, get him down to 4 health, and then Dagger will go up 4 health, back to 5, which is really good. Then your opponent just like has to deal with Dagger way longer. Yeah. Also, drawing 2 cards on this is probably good. I'm a bit hesitant because like fatigue can sometimes be a thing, but I don't think Cloak and Dagger will go to fatigue often. Um, and like because hand advantage is such a big deal. Drawing a 2 from this is really good. Um, you just kind of have the same hand size as if you didn't play this card and played a maneuver, so you'll still have that amount of cards, but like you draw two new ones with this, so it's kind of better than that. Um, and yeah, like I said, you can pair this up with Living Light to spread the damage, um, to actually use your healing, because otherwise, like this doesn't really heal you. It's just like you reassign your health. Um, so yeah, and just like I said, this is not a pass, but yeah, fatigue I don't think is a big deal for Cloak and Dagger because either you combo them before or you just die, probably. Um, However, one neat thing you can do with this card, like I said with a 7, if you deal 7 damage to a 1 health sidekick, you will still take the 7 yourself. With this card, it's kind of the same. If Cloak, for example, is only at 1 HP and Dagger is at 3, for example, you can decide to just deal 4 damage to Cloak, even though he only has 1 HP left. He will die, and then Dagger will recover the full 4. So you can kind of overkill one of your fighters to overheal the other. That's a neat scenario, but like if you can play around that, get your heals, and then also net some health with this, you could theoretically like heal 3 in total from each of those chosen fates, because like you'll still deal 1 damage somehow. So your other fighter will technically recover only 3 in total health measures. It makes 6 healing from this, and then like theoretically 4 from Living Light. So that could push your health total up to 26. Well, that's like a big could. And since you only can over damage once with this card, that will go down 3, so it's 23. And yeah, it can be useful once, but also be sure when to overkill one of your fighters with this, because then like their cards are dead. Um, you can't use them anymore. You only have one body on the board, and yeah. So in conclusion, oh, we have a long conclusion page again. I don't know why I did so short stuff on the first guides. There's so much to tell in a conclusion. Yeah, Cloak and Dagger are combo fighters. Boom! Who would have thought? um, they rely on really good positioning, get your opponent into pins, bait their attacks, get hand advantage, and then do big combo. Low health makes targeting one of them really easy, so be sure to play around that with Living Shadow, with Chosen Fate, with your healing. Um, Try to spread the damage as much as possible. If your opponent wants to go for Dagger first, even if you don't really need her, right now they will still probably have a reason why they want her gone. So even that is just reason enough for you to just swap Cloak in. Um, but yeah, it's very important for you to know which of your fighters is more important for you in any given situation. Because at the start, probably Cloak is way more important to you. Because your opponent still has that great defense, so you probably won't get a big combo turn with Dagger. Sure, Dagger is the one that will win you the game later, but you can't win the game later with Dagger if your opponent still has good blocks, so you'll need Cloak at the start to mill their hand down. Um, so know which of your fighters is like more important in any given situation and in any matchup. There's some matchups like Bloody Mary, for example, where I'd probably say Cloak is just the more important one in general because like milling cards from Mary is it's so incredibly good. Um, so yeah, Cloak is just great for early game to mill your opponent's hand down, keep hand advantage, but won't win you the game. Dagger will struggle in early game, since your opponent has great blocks. Later, you can do a big combo, and then she will win you the game in one turn, maybe. So that's kind of your game plan that you go in with in every matchup, kinda. But yeah, it can differ between like game states. If something happens that you didn't expect or whatever, it can change always. That's kind of the basic structure. So the card tier list. Um, as always, placements of these cards will depend on the matchup. Um, we'll start at the bottom. We have Into the Void, your boostable, like I said. probably used as a bait attack. Can still be good if your opponent played something low and you can still deal the 2 damage with a 2 boost. But yeah, just good to waste blocks from your opponent, not much more. To reverse the Dark Force, kiting with advantage is nice. Playing this on defense will probably lead to you taking some shit ton of damage, so yeah. But it can be good to set up pins sometimes in some situations. Well, yeah. Um, Living Shadow, it's still like a 4 block most of the time, which is good. Being able to swap is also good, but this can be offensive cancelled, and since you can't really use the card with Cloak, if Dagger dies, it's just a blank 2, which then feels bad, so it's also kind of conditional. Um, Light Force Barrage for Dagger, it's like, it's still a 7 value attack, so it's really, really good as a finisher. It can allow you to, like, guarantee your first combo, um, but taking damage yourself, like next to your opponent attacking you, and then you take damage with this yourself from your own cards, is like really bad. So not that useful often. Living Light, probably a bit too conditional, because your opponent can play around that very easily. Offensive feint, defensive feint, whatever, um, because they know what you have to do to heal which fighter, then they'll play around that. But still, if you manage to do it, still a good card. Um, Combined with Chosen Fate, probably best used, and Chosen Fate is also in B tier, because being able to rearrange health is like good, and drawing the 2 cards is also nice to keep up hand advantage. This will allow you to keep your fighters alive, and that's just probably the thing you want most. However, the cards that are like A and S tier for me are the ones that will actually win you the game, which are like Offensive Feint, for example, Into Darkness to set up pins, mess with your opponent's positioning, and then your big chunky attacks that actually do stuff. Commanding, I've thought about getting it up to S tier, but I think those cards are like maybe a tiny bit more strong. Commanding just 5 value attack, really good. Perfect balance, 6 value attack, really, really good. Also your highest printed block, that's always a 4 and not conditional to only Dagger, like Living Shadow. Um, Dark Force Dimension, placing your opponent anywhere where you want, plus extra discard, really, really good. And then Channel Dark, um, gaining the action, placing your opponent next to Dagger, again, messing with that positioning is really, really great. Um, and yeah, that's the card tier list. So we'll next talk about the matchups. Um, as always, only based on personal experiences, so feel free to disagree in the comments. This time, big thanks to Mamart for actually helping me making this as accurate as possible. He's like the Cloak and Dagger guy in the competitive Unmatched community. I had to experience that myself in one ladder season. So yeah, big thanks to him. Um, the fighters typically that Cloak and Dagger like are ones with like low draw, low movement, and like not too much health. And the ones they really don't like are the ones that smack hard. Like that's your biggest problem. Angry Achilles, Moon Knight, Luke, Bigfoot. Like you'll just die before you can actually do something with your cards because your defense kinda suck. Um, Also like characters that just deny you playing the game, like She-Hulk, Sherlock, Injun in some ways because you can't get to him, Wukong because you can't get to him. You really don't like those as well. But yeah, low draw, low movement, Winter Soldier, Yen is pretty even, which is cool. Bat is pretty even, which is also cool. Bat maybe a bit on the bad side, but I think it's still possible. And the ones you like, it's like Mary. You can just mill her hand size down, mess with her. Like something like Genie is really good for you because he has so low value blocks. Um, Widow is actually fine because you can just combo her pretty easily. Um, and yeah, the ones that are almost free win, well, They're the worst of the worst. I think they're almost free win for everyone. So yeah. Then talking about the maps. Well, Cloak and Dagger usually like smaller maps where like pinning is way easier because you're a combo fighter and you don't have big boost values. So a move 4 center map is almost a must because you only have 4-3 boosts. You maybe use at least one of them on attack and you use one other for your boostable attack, and then you only can move 2 times up to 5 spaces anymore, so you can only attack 2 times again, and then the opponent will just run away and you fatigue. So move 4 center is extremely crucial for you. Also, maps with small pockets where you can hide one of your fighters can be really good because it just adds to your survivability. Or maps with pockets where you can just pin your opponent easier. It's also really good. So top three maps probably like the first is not even question. Raptor Paddock is by far their best map because you have so many movement effects that can like get your opponent in the pit, then you can trap them there, pin, and just combo off or make them discard every single turn. It's really good. It's a really small map, so you'll probably be able to reach every single time, and you have two bodies on the board, so you might even not have to boost in some cases to get to them, or just boost one. Hanging Gardens, the high ground is really good for you because you have, just like I said, so many movement effects. You can mess with your opponent's positioning, and you probably get the high ground way more often than them. So that just adds to your attacks, and therefore you deal more combat damage, making it easier to proc your ability. It's not as great for pinning, but I think getting your ability more often is worth for that. And then basketball actually has a spot where you can just place them both, and you are able to reach every single spot on the whole map with a single maneuver. Hiding one of your fighters in the top right corner is great, and yeah, just good maps. So thank you for watching. Shout out again to Memart for helping me getting familiar with Cloak and Dagger, some of the tricks, gameplay, matchups, and maps. Um, Feel free to write feedback or questions in the comments as always, and please tell me which character you want me to cover next. Planned are for next week She-Hulk, and then after that Black Widow. But yeah, if you don't want to see any of those, like She-Hulk maybe. What have I done? It's pain to cover She-Hulk. I'll still do it. Um, and yeah, until next time.